Hi everyone, my name is Angèle and welcome back to my channel. First of all, Happy New Year! Yeah. Today I'm back with a book club video. I haven't posted one for November because I was feeling a bit stressed out in life. Yeah. So I decided to make a video for November and December together. Yeah. So I'm gonna start by talking about the books that I've read in November and December. I think I've read 7 books. Yeah. And most of the books were like very good books. So that was a good way to end the year, I guess, purely based on books. So the first book I read is Beautyland, and I gave this book 5 stars. This book was amazing. This book made me laugh, cry, and it was definitely one of my favorite books of 2025. This book is about a girl named Adina who is born to a single mom in Philadelphia, and the book starts with Adina's childhood, and already as a child she feels that she's different, and often in her dreams she has like visions of a faraway planet, and she knows that she belongs there. She then gets like a fax machine and starts regularly faxing her observations on humans to her extraterrestrial relatives. And this book follows Adina through her whole life and how she navigates relationship, work, and life in general. And I think this book is very relatable to everyone who feels lost or feels different or feel like they don't fit in. And for me as an autistic person, there were like a lot of parts that were extremely relatable. And this book was very sad, but also kind of heartwarming and often also like hilarious. Yeah. I'm gonna read some of my favorite parts. So Adina is always faxing these reports about human beings, and some of them are like very funny. This one is human beings Adina faxes did not think their lives were challenging enough, so they invented roller coasters. A roller coaster is a series of problems on a steel track. Upon encountering real problems, human beings compare their lives to riding a roller coaster, even though they invented roller coasters to be fun things to do on their days off. Makes sense, yeah. Another fun part is she faxes the ego of the human male is by far the most dangerous aspect of human society, and the alien relatives fax back, this has been well documented. This one I found very fun. What is the story implied by wearing an animal print? Look, I have murdered a cheetah, now I will wear its skin to Pilates. Human beings, Adina faxes, rip their addresses off old magazines when they donate them to hair salons. This is how criminals find their victims. They search stacks of People magazines. If they find one where the address has been left on, they think, what a fool, I will go to her house and murder her. Yeah, so this book is like very sad, but also kind of hilarious. And I just love this book and I would really recommend it. As I said, it was one of my favorite books this year. Yeah, do with that information whatever you want, I guess. Then the next book I read is Carmilla. And this book was recommended to me in the comments of my last book club video. That's why I read it. So thank you so much because it was great. I'm very glad I read this. I gave this book 25 stars and I really enjoyed it. It's a very short book, so it's good. Also if you want to read it in a day. I think it's a bit more than 100 pages. So that's great. So 2 words, lesbian vampires. Do I need to say more? I will, but I don't think I need to. This book is about Laura, a young woman who lives alone with her dad in a castle until one night an ill, mysterious young woman comes to the castle to live with them. Carmilla, that's the name of the young woman. And at first Laura is very happy to finally have a friend of her own age, but also a friend in general. But there are some huge red flags about this friend. Yeah. The signs kind of start being more and more obvious to the reader, but I think there's a period of time where Laura is just blinded by her love and also attraction to this friend. And even though this book was written in 1872. There are some parts that I found very relatable when I think about sapphic relationships. I don't find the part anymore, but at some point, Laura, the narrator, she starts by saying now I'm gonna describe to you how this woman looks like, and it's described through the eyes of someone who's clearly going through something called physical attraction. Also there's a part where they are together and she says, it was like the ardor of a lover. It embarrassed me. It was hateful and yet overpowering. And with gloating eyes, she drew me to her, and her hot lips traveled along my cheek in kisses. And she would whisper, almost in sobs, you are mine. You shall be mine. You and I are one forever. That sounds very gay to me. Also, Laura's answer to this is, are we related? Are we related? I used to ask. What can you mean by all this? Anyway, so yes, Carmilla was written in 1872, which is 25 years before Dracula, and is a foundational work of English language vampire literature. Slay. Wikipedia also says that Carmilla popularized the lesbian vampire trope and is considered one of the most influential vampire stories of all time. Yay. So yeah. The next book is not a book I own, but it's a book a friend lent to me. It's There Are Rivers in the Sky, and I really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I feel like this book is kind of hard to explain. I'm gonna try my best. This book follows 3 stories. The story of Arthur in Victorian London, of Narin in 2014 in Turkey, and of Zalika in 2018 in London. And even though these stories are not connected at first, they slowly become intertwined, and we see that these characters are more connected than we thought. And also, water is a big topic in all 3 stories, and it's kind of also the connection between these stories. I don't think this is making a lot of sense, but it's a great book. Yeah, especially if you like books with multiple storylines, I think it's great for that. And it's generally it's sad, but also I want to say sort of hopeful and heartwarming. And I really enjoyed reading it. Yeah, I've said this multiple times. I usually don't read books that are longer than 400 pages, but I've read this one very fast because it was very captivating, and I wanted to read more and know how it ended. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this book. So the next book I read it on my e-reader, and it's Honeymoon for One. I wanted to read a sapphic holiday romance, and I got exactly what I wanted. I gave this book 3 stars, and I enjoyed it, yeah. So we first follow a woman, Robin, who was engaged to her ex, but her ex, she called off the wedding. Yeah, that sucks. And months later, Robin realizes that she forgot to cancel the honeymoon that they had booked together. So Robin lives in Manchester and the honeymoon is in Canada, and she decides to go on her honeymoon alone. And oh my god, she will meet a woman there. Yeah, it was a fun holiday romance and I enjoyed it. So I guess if next Christmas you want to read a lesbian holiday rom-com, I would recommend this one. Yeah, on to the next book. The next book is It Came from the Closet, Queer Reflection on Horror. My favorite word, horror. I give this book 4.75 stars. I really enjoyed it. I started it in October and I finished it in November and I loved it. So I'm gonna just read from the back of the book. 26 contemporary queer and trans writers reflect on the horror films that shaped them and shook them, from Hitchcock to Halloween to Hereditary, exploring a multitude of queer experiences from first kisses and coming out to transition and parenthood. This varied and accessible collection leans into the fun of horror but takes its impact seriously. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I mean, of course, I connected to some essays and stories more, but I really liked every single one of them. And I thought it was a really great book that I would recommend to anyone. And I mean, I'm not a huge fan of horror movies. I get scared very easily, so I haven't watched many. But still, it was a very entertaining and interesting book for me to read. I think, of course, if you're a horror movie fan, it would be even better. But take it from me, who has watched maybe 3 or 4 horror movies. I still really like this. So yeah. The next book is Passing, and I gave this book 4.25 stars. This book was written in the 1920s and is set in New York, also in the 1920s. And the protagonist of this book, Irene, is a Black woman who lives in Harlem with her husband and their sons. And her life changes when she encounters a childhood friend she hasn't seen in decades, whose name is Claire. Claire is described as a light-skinned, beautiful and charming woman. And she tells Irene how, as a teenager, she left behind the Black neighborhood where she used to live. And she started passing for white and hiding her identity as a Black woman from everyone in her life. And everyone, including her extremely racist husband. Yeah. So this book follows these two women after their encounter with Claire trying to insert herself in Irene's life and Irene not wanting to see Claire anymore. It's a very short book, so I'm gonna stop here. But yeah, I really like this book. And I think that the writing style is beautiful and it is also very tense because it keeps going and like Irene is very stressed out about all of this, and at some point it can only end badly for one of them or both of them, and you don't know how it's gonna end, but there's like this tension. And for me, I thought the ending was great and I loved it. And yeah, I really recommend this book if you want to read something short and also if you want to read more classics. Yeah. And then the last book I read in December is the final revival of Opal and Nev, and I gave this book 75 stars. This book has been on my TBR for a long time, and I think like 3 weeks ago I wanted to start a new book and I wanted to read like the first pages of some books, but when I started reading this one, I just couldn't stop reading. Probably many people know Daisy Jones and the Six, and I'm bringing this book up because I read it many years ago. And then I read that this book was kind of the same interview format. And so I really wanted to read it. Also, I have to say, I think I like this book more than Daisy Jones and the Six. I don't know, I just really loved it. And I don't really want to compare the two books, but yeah, here I am. But yeah, it was just to say that it's kind of the same interview structure, which I really liked in Daisy Jones and the Six. And I think it's a very interesting way to write a book. I think it just worked perfectly in this book. So in this book, we have a music journalist called Sunny who writes a book about a rock duo from the 70s who split up and is now considering a reunion in 2016. And so Sunny is personally connected to the story of the band, and she decides to write about their story and the events, also like dramatic events that marked the story of this band. And I honestly don't want to say too much because for me, this is a book that's great to read when you know almost nothing about. So I really don't want to speak too much about the plot. But yeah, I really like this book. I thought it was beautifully written. I think there are some, I'm going to say plot twists that are like perfectly executed. I just really love this book and it was a great book to end the year with. So I would recommend it to anyone. I mean, I think anyone would enjoy this format for a book, but I think like especially if this is something that you might find interesting, then you should definitely read this book because it's great. Yeah. And so now I want to talk about my TBR for January. Those are books that as I always say, I will definitely not read all of them. I'm also not trying to. I just like to have choice. But yeah, so first of all, I have some books that I am currently reading. The first one, I already mentioned it before, and I hope that this time I will finish it, and it's Right Wing Women. Then I have We Could Be Rats from Emily Austin that I also already started. I love Emily Austin's books. She could write any book and I wouldn't even look at the summary. I would just buy it and I know that I will love it. I'm loving this one. I'm almost done. So yeah. Then I also started The Starless Sea. This is a fantasy book and I'm a bit scared of fantasy, but I bought this book like 5 years ago and I think it's a good way to start the year. I usually never read fantasy. It's also longer than what I usually read. I think it's like almost 500 pages. So yeah, I'm excited. Then I have some more books. I have The Machine Stops and Other Stories. I really want to read short stories. I think someone recommended this book. Like, if you liked Severance, the TV show, you should read this book. And I found it in like a vintage store. I really quickly read some parts and it sounded very interesting. So yeah. Then I've got The Picture of Dorian Gray. I read this in high school, but I don't really remember any of it. So I really want to read it again. I've got To the Lighthouse. I've also been wanting to read this for a long time. Maybe this month will be the month. Then I've got The Bluest Eye. I've read a Toni Morrison book last year or 2 years ago and I really liked it, and so I really want to read this one. Then I've got Private Brides. I've read Our Wives Under the Sea from Julia Armfield and I really want to read this one. And last but not least, I have Permafrost. I also really want to read this. So yeah, if you've read any of these books, please let me know which one I should read, or like even if someone you know has read one of them and they really recommended it, let me know. I will read it. That's the rule. So that's it for my TBR. Now I have 2 book recommendations for you for January. And the first one is Boulder. I read this one last year and I loved it. And I don't know, I think it's good. I mean, I don't know. I think it's good to read in January. I don't know. I couldn't tell you why. Maybe it's because they live in Iceland afterwards and it's cold now. Whatever. So yeah, this book is about a woman named Boulder who works as a cook on a merchant ship, and she lives a very solitary and quiet life until one day she meets a woman and decides to move in with her. And so they fall in love, but this woman nicknamed Boulder abandons her previous life, and also this other woman kind of convinces Boulder to have a child together, and we see Boulder kind of questioning everything about her life, about motherhood, about living not at sea anymore, and how everything is different in her life now than it was before. And yeah, I read this book in one sitting. It's a very short book and I was just captivated by it. I loved it, and I think you get very attached to the main character, and it's a very good book. So yeah, that's my first recommendation. And the second recommendation is The Glass Castle. That's a memoir. This is a memoir about the author's childhood in a very dysfunctional family. And so Jeanette grew up with her parents and siblings, and they used to move a lot, to be on the road a lot. I would say it's a very sad book, but I think it's a great memoir. And if you're in the mood for something that might be a bit heavy emotionally, but very honest and unique, well, I think this book is for you. I love reading memoirs, and I read this one last year and I just really liked it. So yeah, that's my second and last recommendation for you. So yeah, so that was it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these books, please let me know in the comments what you thought about these books. Let me know what you're currently reading or reading next. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.